Welcome to Safe Simple Sound Podcast. I am your host, PK. Today we have an exciting episode lined up where we use AI voices to bring insightful discussions to life. But before we dive in, please note this podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes only and does not constitute financial, legal, or professional advice. Investment decisions should always consider your personal circumstances, financial goals, and risk tolerance. Be sure to consult a qualified financial professional before making any investment decisions. If you would like personalized guidance, you can reach out to me at savesimplesound.com/contact. Now, let's get started.
Today, we're diving into the increasingly relevant world of ESG and impact investing, exploring how you can potentially make your money matter. Today's episode is based on an article titled ESG and Impact Investing Making Your Money Matter on safesimplesound.com website, which provides a comprehensive overview of this evolving investment landscape. This article highlights some really interesting points. First, it emphasizes that strong ESG practices can actually indicate well-managed companies and potentially lead to better risk management and innovation. Second, it offers practical steps for getting started with ESG investing, no matter your experience level. We'll be using these takeaways as a springboard for our conversation today. So how will we break this down? First, we'll unpack the fundamentals with understanding ESG and impact investing. We'll explore a beginner's dilemma, choosing between traditional and ESG investing, and also delve into the complex world of impact measurement. Then we'll move on to navigating the challenges of ESG investing. We'll tackle the tricky issue of greenwashing versus genuine commitment and discuss how to balance ESG factors with financial performance, a question many investors grapple with. Finally, we'll get practical with building an ESG portfolio. We'll guide you through choosing the right investment vehicles and discuss strategies for integrating ESG into an existing portfolio. Get ready for a fascinating discussion packed with real-world scenarios and actionable advice to help you align your investments with your values. Let's get started. Let's start with a common dilemma faced by new investors: choosing between traditional investments and ESG. Imagine you're Taylor, a young professional ready to start investing, but torn between maximizing returns and aligning your investments with your values. Taylor, that's you today. Sam, our expert, is here to help us navigate this.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, that's me in a nutshell. I want my investments to grow, but I also care about things like climate change and social justice. I just don't know where to start or if I have to sacrifice returns to invest responsibly.
That's a fantastic question, Taylor, and one we hear often. Sam, is it actually possible to achieve both financial goals and positive social impact through investing?
Absolutely, Alex. That misconception that ESG investing inherently sacrifices returns is fading fast. A lot of research, like the NYU Stern study mentioned in the article, shows a positive or at least neutral correlation between ESG performance and financial performance. Companies with strong ESG practices often manage risk better, innovate more, and have stronger stakeholder relationships, all of which can positively impact their bottom line.
So, no inherent trade-off. That's encouraging. Taylor, what are your initial thoughts on that?
That's good to hear, but it still seems overwhelming. How do I even begin to navigate the world of ESG investing? It feels like there's so much jargon and so many options.
Great question. Sam, how can a beginner navigate this seemingly complex landscape?
Start simple. Define your priorities. What matters most to you? Is it clean energy, ethical labor practices, something else? Once you know your priorities, you can start looking at investment options that align with those values. For instance, if you're passionate about renewable energy, you might explore clean energy ETFs or mutual funds.
So if I'm concerned about, say, deforestation, I could look for funds that specifically exclude companies involved in unsustainable logging practices.
Precisely. You can screen for companies actively working against deforestation or for those with strong environmental policies in place. There are also a lot of resources available, like ESG rating providers, that can help you assess companies and funds.
Could thematic funds be a great entry point for someone like Taylor, right?
Yes, thematic funds focusing on specific ESG issues, like sustainable agriculture or water conservation, can be a good way to target your impact. Or you could explore broader ESG mutual funds or ETFs that incorporate environmental, social, and governance factors across a diversified portfolio. Robo-advisors are another accessible option, particularly for beginners, as they offer automated portfolio management with ESG screening.
So if I understand correctly, I can invest in funds that align with my values and potentially achieve competitive returns. And there are different approaches like thematic funds, ESG ETFs, and robo-advisors.
Exactly. And remember, diversification is still crucial. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, even if it's an ethically sourced basket.
That's a key takeaway. Diversification within ESG is just as important as diversification in traditional investing. Don't let your values drive you into a highly concentrated portfolio.
This is all starting to make sense. It's less daunting than I thought.
That's what we're here for, to make these concepts accessible. So to recap, prioritize your values, explore different ESG investment options, and remember the importance of diversification. Before we wrap up, a call to action for our listeners. Explore the different ESG investment options available. Research funds, look at individual companies if you're comfortable with that level of involvement, and consider consulting a financial advisor specializing in sustainable investing. They can help you create a portfolio that reflects both your financial goals and your values. Let's continue our exploration of ESG and impact investing. And now we're diving into a crucial yet often challenging aspect: impact measurement. Our scenario focuses on an experienced impact investor who's realized that simply investing in companies claiming to do good isn't enough. They want to quantify the actual social and environmental returns their portfolio is generating. They're looking for tangible evidence of the positive change their investments are creating. So, Sam, let's start by addressing the heart of this challenge. What are the best metrics and frameworks for measuring the impact of investments?
That's a great question, Alex, and it's one many impact investors grapple with. There's no single best approach, as the ideal metrics depend heavily on the specific impact area. For example, if you're investing in renewable energy, metrics like tons of CO2 emissions avoided or kilowatt hours of clean energy generated would be relevant. Whereas if you're focused on affordable housing, the number of units built or families housed would be more appropriate. Some common frameworks investors use include the Impact Management Project, the Sustainable Development Goals, and the IRIS Plus system. These provide standardized metrics and guidance for measuring and managing impact. The IMP in particular offers a 5-dimension framework covering what, who, how much, contribution, and risk.
So if I understand correctly, Sam, there's not a one-size-fits-all solution. It's more about finding the right metrics for the specific area you're investing in, right?
Exactly, Taylor. Just as there are different ESG priorities, there are different ways to measure the impact of your investments. And just like with ESG ratings, it's important to look at multiple sources and frameworks for a comprehensive picture.
Excellent point, Sam. This leads perfectly to my second question. How can investors ensure transparency and accountability in impact reporting? This is especially important given the potential for greenwashing.
Transparency and accountability are paramount. Investors should look for companies that not only set clear impact goals, but also publicly report their progress towards achieving them. Third-party certifications and verifications can add another layer of credibility. For example, B Corp certification demonstrates a company's commitment to social and environmental responsibility. Think of it as a seal of approval from a trusted external source.
So similar to how we use financial audits to verify a company's financial health, we can use third-party certifications to verify their impact claims.
Precisely. And similar to how we discussed varying ESG ratings, these third-party certifications will vary in their focus and standards as well. As an investor, it's your role to find the ones that align with your priorities and values. Also, actively engaging with the companies you invest in is crucial. Don't be afraid to ask questions about their impact measurement methodologies and request evidence of their progress.
Let's recap. We've established that impact measurement requires a tailored approach depending on the specific investment area. Standardized frameworks like the IMP, SDGs, and IRIS Plus can provide helpful guidance, but investors need to look for transparency and accountability through things like third-party certifications and direct engagement with companies.
This is really helpful. I can see how it would be easy to get lost in the complexities of impact measurement. But by focusing on specific, measurable outcomes and demanding transparency, investors can really make a difference and see the real-world impact of their investments.
Absolutely, Taylor. And to our listeners, your homework for this week is to research different impact measurement methodologies and look for third-party certifications and verifications that resonate with you. Don't just take a company's word for it. Dig deeper to understand the real impact they're making. Let's navigate to the tricky terrain of ESG investing. Next scenario focuses on a common investor concern: how to distinguish between companies genuinely committed to ESG principles and those engaging in greenwashing, or essentially just putting on a good face for marketing purposes. Taylor, our resident learner, is particularly skeptical about this and wants to know how to identify companies truly walking the walk.
Exactly. I read that article you shared, Alex, and while I'm excited about the potential of ESG investing, the whole greenwashing thing makes me nervous. How can I be sure I'm not just being tricked by clever marketing?
That's a great question and a valid concern. Sam, our expert, can shed some light on this. Sam, how can investors differentiate between genuine ESG efforts and superficial marketing tactics?
The key lies in looking beyond the surface-level marketing and digging deeper. Genuine ESG commitment is reflected in consistent action and measurable impact, not just flashy slogans. Think of it like this. A company truly committed to reducing its carbon footprint will invest in renewable energy infrastructure, optimize its supply chain for efficiency, and publicly report on its progress, ideally with third-party verification. A company greenwashing might just issue a press release about its commitment without any concrete action plan or evidence of real change.
So if I understand correctly, I should look for tangible evidence of action, not just words. This reminds me of what we discussed about evaluating financial performance, looking at the actual numbers, not just the promises.
Precisely, Taylor. It's about verifiable data, not just narratives. And Sam, what resources or tools can help investors uncover these greenwashing practices?
Several tools exist. First, utilize multiple ESG rating providers. Like anything, there's no single perfect source, and different providers use different methodologies. Comparing ratings across providers can highlight discrepancies and offer a more balanced view. Second, analyze company sustainability reports. These reports often provide granular detail on a company's ESG performance, targets, and strategies. Don't just skim them. Look for specific initiatives, measurable outcomes, and alignment with established frameworks like the Sustainable Development Goals.
That's helpful. So using multiple rating providers is like getting a second opinion in medicine, and digging into the sustainability reports is like reading the fine print, right? But what if the company's just good at making their reports look good?
Excellent point, Taylor. That's where direct engagement can be powerful. Attend shareholder meetings, participate in online forums, or even directly contact the company with questions about their ESG practices. Their responsiveness and the depth of their answers can be telling. Also, look for third-party certifications and audits, like B Corp certification, which provide an extra layer of validation.
Let's recap. To identify genuine ESG commitment and avoid greenwashing, remember the 3 key steps Sam outlined. Use multiple ESG rating providers, analyze company sustainability reports, and engage directly with companies. Think of it as a 3-legged stool. You need all 3 for stability.
This is much clearer now. I initially felt overwhelmed, but breaking it down like this makes it feel manageable. Looking at multiple ratings, digging into the reports, and even engaging directly with the companies, it's all about doing your homework, just like with any other investment.
Exactly. And remember, it's a continuous process. ESG landscapes are always changing. Regularly reviewing and updating your approach is essential. So, our call to action for today: start incorporating these steps into your ESG research. Utilize multiple ESG rating providers, analyze company sustainability reports, and engage directly with companies to assess their ESG commitments. This will empower you to make informed decisions and invest in companies truly aligned with your values. Let's continue navigating the challenges of ESG investing. In this next scenario, we're diving into the balancing act between ESG factors and financial performance. Imagine a portfolio manager trying to integrate ESG into their strategy while facing pressure from clients who prioritize maximizing profits. A tough spot, right? So, Sam, as our resident expert, I'd like to start by asking, how can investors balance the desire for both financial returns and positive social impact? And are there specific ESG factors that are more strongly correlated with financial performance than others?
Excellent questions, Alex. Balancing financial returns and social impact is definitely top of mind for many investors these days. It doesn't have to be an either-or situation. The key is to view ESG not as a constraint, but as a lens for identifying potential risks and opportunities that traditional financial analysis might miss. Regarding correlations, research is ongoing, but some studies suggest that strong governance practices, the G in ESG, often correlate positively with financial performance. Think about it. Well-governed companies tend to be more transparent, less prone to scandals, and better at managing risk, all of which can positively impact their bottom line.
So, if I understand correctly, good governance can actually boost profits. This reminds me of what we discussed about Enron in a previous episode. Their lack of transparency and poor governance ultimately led to their collapse. That's a pretty dramatic example of how the G in ESG can impact financial performance.
Exactly, Taylor. That's a perfect real-world connection. Sam, could you elaborate on other ESG factors and their potential link to financial performance, perhaps with an example?
Sure. Consider environmental factors. A company actively working to reduce its carbon footprint might initially face higher costs for new technologies. However, in the long run, they might benefit from lower energy bills, reduced regulatory risks, and a stronger brand reputation attracting environmentally conscious consumers.
Okay, so it's a long-term play. But what about the social aspect? I imagine things like fair labor practices can add costs, right? How does that contribute to profitability?
Excellent point, Taylor. Investing in employee well-being, fair wages, and diverse hiring practices can sometimes seem like added expense up front. However, these practices can lead to higher employee morale, lower turnover rates, and increased productivity. They can also enhance a company's brand image, attracting both customers and top talent.
So, as we're hearing, integrating ESG factors isn't just about doing good. It's about identifying companies that are well-managed, forward-thinking, and positioned for long-term success. It's like looking beyond the immediate numbers and considering the bigger picture.
So if I'm an investor who wants to maximize my returns and make a positive impact, it seems like incorporating ESG factors is actually a smart move, not just a nice to have.
Precisely, Taylor. And remember, the information in the article we provided, ESG and Impact Investing Making Your Money Matter, further reinforces these points. It highlights the growing body of research connecting strong ESG practices with better risk management, increased innovation, and stronger financial performance.
Exactly. It's important to remember that, like any investment strategy, a focus on ESG requires careful research and due diligence. There can be challenges with data quality and potential greenwashing, where companies exaggerate their ESG efforts.
Great point, Sam. To summarize, incorporating ESG factors into your investment strategy is not about sacrificing financial returns for social impact. It's about recognizing that these two objectives can complement and reinforce each other. As a call to action for our listeners, we encourage you to conduct thorough research on the relationship between ESG and financial performance, considering a blended approach that combines traditional and ESG investment strategies. The article we shared is a great place to start. Let's switch gears and discuss the topic of building an ESG portfolio. Specifically, let's tackle the challenge of choosing the right investment vehicles. Imagine you're ready to align your investments with your values, but you're overwhelmed by the sheer number of options. ESG funds, ETFs, individual stocks, robo-advisors. Where do you even begin? Sam and Taylor, let's unpack this. First, what are the pros and cons of these different ESG investment vehicles?
Great question, Alex. Let's start with ESG funds. Mutual funds and ETFs offer diversification and professional management. This is a big plus for investors new to ESG. ETFs are generally more cost-effective than mutual funds, but both provide a simplified way to invest in a basket of ESG-screened companies. However, you have less control over individual holdings within the fund.
So if I'm concerned about, say, animal welfare, an ESG fund might invest in a company that mostly aligns with my values but still engages in some animal testing.
That's possible. That's where thematic funds come in. They focus on specific issues like clean energy or sustainable agriculture. This gives you more targeted exposure, but also concentrates your risk.
It's like choosing between a pre-made salad mix and picking your own ingredients. The mix is convenient, but picking your own gives you more control. Taylor, what are your thoughts on individual stocks?
Well, they seem like a lot of work. The article mentioned researching companies, reviewing reports. This reminds me of what we discussed about due diligence last week. It's important, but time-consuming.
Absolutely. Investing in individual stocks requires significant research to ensure the company's ESG practices align with your values. You're taking on more risk, but you have greater control and the potential for higher returns if you choose wisely. However, you also need to diversify adequately, which can be challenging and expensive when investing in individual stocks.
Right, it's a higher degree of difficulty. Now let's talk about robo-advisors. Sam, can you explain how they fit into the ESG landscape?
Robo-advisors offer automated portfolio management with ESG screening, often at a lower cost and with lower minimum investments than traditional advisors. They're great for beginners. However, the level of ESG integration can vary between platforms and the customization options might be limited.
So if I understand correctly, the best choice depends on my comfort level with research, how much control I want, and my budget. Is there a way to combine these approaches?
Absolutely. You could hold a core portfolio of ESG ETFs or mutual funds for diversification, and then add individual stocks of companies you've thoroughly researched that align strongly with your values. You could even use a robo-advisor for the core ESG portion.
Precisely. Building a diversified ESG portfolio is like constructing a building. You need a solid foundation, which could be ESG funds or a robo-advisor. Then you can add individual bricks, which are individual stocks based on your specific interests and risk tolerance.
Excellent analogy, Sam. Let's recap. We discussed ESG funds and ETFs for diversification and professional management, thematic funds for targeted exposure, individual stocks for greater control but requiring significant research, and robo-advisors for automated management and lower barriers to entry. The ideal mix depends on your individual circumstances.
This is really helpful. I feel much more equipped to navigate the different options.
Great. Before we wrap up, remember to assess your risk tolerance, investment goals, and ESG priorities. Consult a financial advisor if you need personalized guidance in creating an ESG investment plan that aligns with your overall financial strategy. Next, we're tackling a common question. How can investors with traditional portfolios start incorporating ESG principles without needing a complete overhaul? We're talking about a gradual transition towards sustainability, not a radical shift. Sam, Taylor, are you ready to dive in?
Absolutely, Alex. I think this is where a lot of people get stuck. They like the idea of ESG, but the thought of rebuilding their entire portfolio can be daunting.
Precisely, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And thankfully, there are many entry points.
Perfect. So let's start with the basics. How can investors start incorporating ESG into an existing portfolio, Sam?
One of the simplest ways is to start with a review of your current holdings. Look at the companies you're invested in and research their ESG performance. Several online resources and rating agencies can help with this. You might be surprised to find some of your existing investments already align with ESG principles.
So it's not necessarily about selling everything and starting over. That's a relief. Where do these ratings come from?
Good question. Various organizations like MSCI and Sustainalytics provide ESG ratings based on company disclosures, news reports, and other data sources. They assess companies across those core areas we discussed earlier: environmental impact, social responsibility, and corporate governance. However, these ratings can sometimes vary, so it's helpful to look at multiple sources.
Excellent point, Sam. This reminds me of what we discussed earlier about the challenges of data consistency in ESG. It's important to use these ratings as a starting point and not the sole determinant. Taylor, what are your thoughts on practically going about this review?
Well, if I understand correctly, I'd start by listing out all the companies I'm currently invested in. Then, I'd look up their ESG ratings on a couple of different platforms. But it sounds like I shouldn't rely solely on these ratings. What else should I be looking at?
You're spot on, Taylor. Beyond the ratings, explore company websites for sustainability reports, read news articles, and see if the company has been involved in any controversies. Think of it like due diligence, similar to how you'd research a company's financials.
Great advice, Sam. Let's say after this review, Taylor finds some companies that don't align with her values. What's the next step?
The next step involves gradually transitioning. Start by replacing investments that have poor ESG performance with better alternatives. For example, if you own a large cap stock with a questionable environmental record, you could consider swapping it for a similar company in the same sector with a better ESG profile. Or look into ESG mutual funds, or ETFs. These offer diversified exposure to companies that meet specific ESG criteria.
That makes a lot of sense. This reminds me of our discussion about diversification. By shifting towards ESG mutual funds, or ETFs, I could also improve my portfolio diversification. It's like hitting two birds with one stone.
Exactly. Sam, what are some key considerations for investors as they transition their portfolios?
Prioritize what matters most to you. Are you particularly passionate about climate change? Social justice? Focus on the ESG factors that resonate with your values. Also, consider the costs. Some ESG funds have higher expense ratios than traditional funds, and importantly, align your ESG choices with your overall investment goals and risk tolerance.
To recap, we've covered several key takeaways. First, review your existing holdings and research their ESG performance. Second, use multiple sources for ESG ratings and conduct thorough due diligence. Third, prioritize your values and gradually transition by replacing less sustainable investments with better options like ESG mutual funds or ETFs.
This has been incredibly helpful. I feel much more confident about how to approach ESG investing now.
Excellent, Taylor. And for our listeners, we encourage you to take action. Review your current holdings through an ESG lens, identify areas for improvement, and gradually incorporate ESG investments into your portfolio. Remember, every step towards sustainable investing is a step in the right direction. And that concludes our deep dive into the world of ESG and impact investing here on Safe, Simple, Sound. We explored how to align your investments with your values, covering everything from understanding the difference between ESG and impact investing to navigating the challenges of greenwashing and measuring real-world impact. We even tackled some tough scenarios, like that beginner investor trying to balance returns with their values, and the portfolio manager grappling with client demands for maximum profit. Remember, like the article highlighted, strong ESG practices can often indicate well-managed companies, and there are multiple approaches to ESG investing, so you can find what works best for you. One of the most impactful discussions for me was around identifying truly sustainable companies. Avoiding that greenwashing trap is crucial. The tips we shared about utilizing multiple ESG rating providers and really digging into company reports are definitely worth revisiting. A huge thank you to all our listeners for tuning in today. Your support means the world to us. Don't forget to check out the show notes for all the links and resources we mentioned. While you're there, leave us a review and let us know what resonated with you most. And of course, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next episode. Until then, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep the conversation going. This is Alex, signing off. Stay safe, simple, and sound.
That's all for this episode. If you found it valuable, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. For more insights, you can join my newsletter at safesimplesound.com. If you would like personalized guidance, you can reach out to us at safesimplesound.com/contact. Until next time, take care and bye for now.